welcome back. I am going to do a video today on more division, but with a different strategy. And we're going to start off with what we were doing yesterday with the fruit pizzas to show you how to use a ratio table to solve that. And then we're going to go into a problem string that deals with figuring out how fast people are running or walking based on their pace per mile. So to start with, today we will work on division using a strategy called the equivalent ratio strategy, and we're going to use ratio tables to do this. So I didn't redraw the whole chart for you, but I just wanted to show you an example of one type of fruit that we could turn into a ratio table to relate it back to that. And then we're going to move into a different problem string where we work with the running and walking based on how fast they go per mile. So if I'm going to change this to a ratio table, I'm going to use grapes, and it will be the cups of grapes on top and the number of pizzas on bottom, and I'll turn it into a ratio table so that it looks like that. And I know the cups of fruit, in this case the cups of grapes, 1 cup was used, and they only made 1/4 of a pizza. They didn't even make a whole pizza. Well, I know that I can multiply 1/4 by 4 to make it into 1, and then that's really easy to compare it because we want to know how many cups of grapes we need to make each pizza individually. So I could do, if I multiply the bottom by 4, I now have to multiply the top by 4, and 1 times 4 is 4. So I know in order to make one whole pizza, fruit pizza with grapes on it, I would need 4 cups of those grapes. Okay, now we're going to move into looking at how fast different people are running or walking by determining their pace per mile. And that determines how many minutes it takes them to cover per mile. And this is going to be a problem string, which means each problem is going to build on each other. So the first problem will help us and give us information to help us solve the second one. The first problem says if a student ran 4 miles in 20 minutes, how fast was she running? What was her pace per mile? How long would it take her to run just 1 mile in that pace? So we know that she's running 20 minutes. And we know that she ran 4 miles. We want to know what her pace was, or how fast she ran per mile. And to do that, we're going to do the 20 minutes divided by the 4 miles to give us our pace. And I'm going to show you how to solve this today using the equivalent ratios. So that's going to be a ratio table. So our problem is over here. Solution. And I'll do our solution in a different color. All right, so I'm going to do minutes on top. And you can switch these around, but you have to make sure that you have the information together. Miles on bottom. Like I could do miles on top and minutes on bottom. You just have to know how to read the table. So for the minutes, I know there are 20 minutes. For the miles, I know there are 4 miles. And I want to know how many minutes he ran in just 1 mile. So I know I'm trying to get to 1. I know to get to 1, I can do 4 divided by 4 will give me 1. And what I do on bottom, I have to do on the top. So then I'm going to do 20 divided by 4. And I know 20 divided by 4 is 5. So he ran 1 mile every 5 minutes. So that's 5 minutes per mile. Now the next problem is, I'll separate those out. If a student ran 2 miles in 20 minutes, how fast was he running? What was his pace per mile? And I'm actually going to write this out. I forgot at the top. The answer would be 5 minutes per mile. Okay, so now down here, they ran 2 miles in 20 minutes. What was his pace per mile? So I know this one will be 20 divided by 2. And let's see if we can figure out that solution. So I have minutes on top, miles on bottom. I have 2 miles, 20 minutes, and I'm trying to get per mile. So per mile, mile is singular, meaning 1. I know I have to divide 2 by 2 to get to 1, so that means I need to divide 20 by 2, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. So they ran 10 minutes per mile. Good. Now this next one, I'm going to read it to you, and then I want you to pause and see if you can solve it on your own. And I'm going to move it down just a little bit so you can see all of the work. So the next problem we are working with is a student ran 8 miles in 40 minutes. If a student ran 8 miles in 40 minutes, how fast was she running? What was her pace per mile? How long would it take her to just run 1 mile at that pace? So again, I know I'm going to take my 40 minutes and divide it by 8. I'm going to set your ratio table up for you, and then I want you to pause the video. So I have minutes on top, miles on bottom. I'm going to create my ratio table. I have 8 miles. I have 40 minutes. Now go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out how many minutes he needed to run to just get 1 mile. Okay, I hope you were able to solve that on your own. If you weren't, I'm going to show you how here, or you can check your answer if you were. So I know to get to 1, if I'm going from a whole number to 1, all I have to do is divide that whole number by itself, just like anything multiplied by 1 equals itself. So 8 divided by 8 is going to give me 1. Same with 2 divided by 2 and 4 divided by 4. And what I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So I'm going to divide 40 by 8 as well. And since I know my math facts, I know that 8 times 5 equals 40. So 40 divided by 8 must equal 5, meaning they ran 5 minutes per mile, just as they did in our first problem. I'm going to give you one more problem to solve, and then I want you to try and do your worksheet on your own. So since we're working with a problem string, I'll go down a little bit further. So the last problem we're going to work on is a student ran 3 miles in 30 minutes. How fast was he running? What was his pace per mile? So I know I'm going to do 30 divided by 3. Then ratio table again, minutes on top, miles on bottom. And make sure you're consistent with it, because your brain will trick you if you start switching your minutes and miles around. So I have 3 miles, and I have 30 minutes. And remember, we're doing this is the equivalent ratio strategy, and we're doing it, and we're making equivalent ratios on a ratio table so that we can divide in a different way than the partial quotients model or long division. So I'm trying to get per mile. Again, mile is singular, so you're trying to get to 1. To get a whole number to 1, you can always divide it by itself. What you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. 30 divided by 3 is 10. So this person ran 1 mile every 10 minutes, or in 10 minutes could run 1 mile. All right, now that you have learned how to do the partial or the equal equivalent ratio strategy, I want you to go ahead and work on page 263, assigned in Google Classroom. Okay, email me with any questions. If we need to set up a private Zoom meeting, we can, so that you can understand the equivalent ratio strategy. If you have a different strategy and it's what makes most sense to you, go ahead and use it. Not a big deal. If this strategy you don't think you'll ever use, give it a shot. If you don't like it, well, at least you tried. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.